Ghostesses, spirits, and all that's supernatural was strongly believed in the Georgian era. London, with its mist-filled streets, dark alleyways, and overflowing graveyards, gives these stories a dark, sinister, atmospheric feel that lets your imagination run wild. In November of 1803, a young man walking through a graveyard with his friend claimed to have been attacked by a ghost. It grabbed him by the throat, but when the man managed to force it away, he couldn't see anyone. But as he pushed forward with his fists, he felt something soft like a coat before it disappeared behind a gravestone. His friend, who was ahead of him, heard his cries and ran to his aid, only to find the man in a state of distress and confusion, but he saw nothing. The rumour of the ghost, who apparently went floating around dressed in white, or sometimes wore a calf-skin dress with horns on its head and glass eyes, went on for months, terrifying men, women and children alike. A carriage driver, it was rumoured, nearly caused the death of some of his passengers one night after he thought he saw a ghost and became so shaken he lost control of his carriage. A pregnant woman and an elderly woman, it was also rumoured, became so terrified of the ghost they died 2 days later. A night watchman claimed, under oath, to have seen the ghost all dressed in white. He gave chase. The ghost, after removing its white covering, possibly a sheet, moved quickly and disappeared. The Watchmen of Hammersmith were a group of men who were authorised by the government to help deter criminal activity. They also helped with community actions such as fire safety, but mostly they concentrated on crime prevention. In this case, they were unsure of the ghost's existence and were determined to stop the person or persons responsible for instilling fear in the neighbourhood. Hammersmith, London, on a cold, dark January night in the year 1804. A man called Thomas Millwood decided to call at his parents' home to visit his family. It was late when he called. He explained to his sister that he was waiting for his wife to finish work so he could walk her home. He spent some time chatting with his sister, and when the watchman cried past 11 o'clock, he thought it best to go, so his wife wouldn't venture out alone. He said goodbye to his sister, and she watched him leave. Thomas worked as a bricklayer, and his work clothes were white linen trousers, a waistcoat and an apron. Thomas's mother-in-law had noted his manner of dress and worried about the colouring, as they had been remarked on recently by others who had come across Thomas in the dark, fearing him as the ghost. Francis Smith, a young excise officer, was joined by watchman John Locke as they set out to patrol the neighbourhood. Their senses were heightened with the knowledge of a spectre running amok around their area. After discussing the sightings, they were left a little on edge. They parted to patrol their assigned areas. Later that night, to Smith's horror, he noticed something coming towards him. The pathway was so very dark, so he couldn't quite make out what it was or who it was he saw. The figure was dressed all in white. Francis called out. No reply. The figure kept coming forward. Thomas Millwood's sister, Anne, stood at the door watching her brother go. She watched as he vanished into the dark. Within minutes she heard a voice shouting, "Damn you! Who are you? And what are you? Damn you, I will shoot you." And whilst they were speaking, a gun went off. Anne ran into the dark, and finding her brother alone, lying on the ground, she realised he wasn't responding to her, and she ran to look for help. Francis Smith slowly approached the body on the ground. He became distraught when he saw a man, just a man, lying, covered in blood and not moving. He ran, shaking, looking for help. Finding the watchman, John Locke, Mr. Gilbert and Mr. Stowe, he relayed his story and asked them to come help. They all ran to the spot where Thomas lay. On inspection, John Locke noticed Francis had been shot in the neck and realised he was quite dead. Locke told Smith to go home to his lodgings and wait for them there. They moved Thomas to an inn called the Black Lion for a surgeon to inspect the body. Mr. Flower confirmed Thomas had been killed by a gunshot to the lower jaw that had severed his spinal cord. Francis Smith was taken in and found guilty of willful murder by the coroner's jury. Smith pleaded not guilty, despite having admitted firing the gun. The court could only go by Smith's account. The closest they could get to a witness was Anne Millwood, Thomas's sister. She insisted, as she told the court, in her opinion, her brother wouldn't have had time to respond to Mr. Smith before the gun went off. At the court trial, the jury were conflicted. Mr. Smith's character was exemplary. No one thought anything terrible of him. He hadn't ran and admitted he had done it straight away. The jury were told there was only 2 verdicts, murder or acquittal. For murder, an act of malice must be present. For example, someone can shoot into a room of strangers and kill one of them. Or a killer might shoot a gun but miss the intended target and kill another person unintentionally. Malice was present in both cases. The judge highlighted the issues for the jury to consider, mainly that Smith shot the gun not in self-defense nor by accident. Also, Thomas Millwood wasn't committing an offence of any kind. The jury was told not to take into account Mr. Smith's good character, as it meant nothing in this case. The jury came back with a guilty of manslaughter. The judge couldn't accept this. A meeting of fellow judges agreed this wasn't acceptable and informed the jury to consult and agree on another verdict. After a short time, they came back declaring Smith guilty of murder. His sentence was to hang and be dissected. On hearing his fate, Smith cried out and had to be carried from the dock. The Lord Chief Baron knew how much interest the case had drawn with the public and how much sympathy the accused had gathered, so he immediately referred the case to the King. By 7 o'clock that evening, his sentence had been commuted to 1 year imprisonment with hard labour. On July the 14th, Francis Smith was given a full pardon. The outcome of this case wouldn't resolve until 1984. The flawed law, where lack of defence for a person acting in good faith came to light again, when a man stepped in when thinking a young person was being attacked by a man. He injured the person. It turned out the man was the victim and he was attempting to detain the young person. He had read the situation wrong. The man was subsequently convicted of assault, but he successfully appealed. It was now established that if an individual believed mistakenly that force was necessary to protect him or herself or to prevent a crime being committed, then so long as that belief was reasonably held and the prosecution could not prove otherwise, no crime could be said to have taken place. This principle was subsequently written into law. 2 days after the shooting, a local boot and shoemaker came forward. His name was John Graham. He explained that he had decided to act as a ghost to frighten his apprentices, who had been terrifying his young children with ghost stories. He admitted this to the magistrates, who didn't know what to do with him, and nothing more could be found of John Graham. So we can only presume the ghost of Hammersmith went free and was never seen again.